Asia, and in South Asia we have two emerging candidates, that is Bangladesh PPP unit and the Nepal PPP unit, who are here, and they have some exciting project details which they will be presenting to you, and then we would subsequently be seeking some more inputs from them about their PPP portfolio and project pipelines. Before I move on to that, let me introduce you with the PPP heads of the two countries. Firstly, I will introduce Mr. Sushil Bhatta, CEO of Nepal Investment Board. Mr. Bhatta is institutionalizing Investment Board of Nepal as the PPP Center of Excellence and Investment Promotion Agency in Nepal. He has demonstrated leadership to develop and implement Investment Board Nepal strategic plan backed by 5 years business plan, and developed and operationalized IBN project bank for PPP projects. Previously, he served as a member of National Planning Commission, an apex body of the government of Nepal, established National Project Bank, developed a system for allocation of matching and transfer of special grant for operationalization of fiscal federalism. He also had the management association. He also led the Management Association of Nepal as president from 2017 to 2020. And our next speaker is Mr. Al-Amin. He is individual PPP specialist, but he is the one who is going to talk about Bangladesh PPP projects today. And he is a seasoned professional, currently serving as individual PPP specialist, also with Asian Development Bank, and he has more than almost 10 years experience in the energy sector. He brings extensive expertise to the position. He has served as the PPP specialist at the PPP Authority of Bangladesh and dealt with the transport and water sector PPPs. He holds certification in project management, procurement, PPP, and more. He is a member of organizations such as PMI, CIPES, IEEE, and IIBA. He holds the titles of PMP, CP3P, and CRIO, and a diploma in procurement and supply chain management. He is a graduate of Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology. Now, thank you very much once again, the audience, for being patient, and if I may request the gentleman on my right to kindly settle down. Nasser, if you could, the session is in progress. Okay. Right. So, may I request Mr. Sushil to kindly give us a insight into the projects, PPP projects, which Nepal is currently pursuing.
Thank you, Banaji. Valued delegates, the speaker, Mr. Amin. Well, first of all, talking about Nepal, and in regard to, in retrospect to PPP, post liberalization 1990, we started venturing into licensing the hydropower project to private sector. So that licensing was made on basically ground of clarity from policy to legal regime, regulatory regime, and procedural regime that allowed and eased the licensing, then licensing authorities, the Department of Electricity Development in Nepal, to award development rights to some FDI project. So we realized that we started PPP long back in 1990. And those projects came into commercial operation within the stipulated timelines. And those projects were backed up by sound, robust market, that is power purchase agreement on take or pay basis by state utility. So that gave an ground for those projects to be commercially viable and investable. But due course of time, as Nepal has an comparative advantage on hydropower, green energy, there is immense potential those all river basins have. And we had a project inventory, the basic specific, sector specific super plan, I would say, wherein those projects were identified by the support of JICA, that gave us an basis for us to ideate, design, and develop project. As of today, if we have to say, Nepal is making a departure towards being self-reliant in energy with a trading regime with potential market neighboring country India, where we have been improving our cooperation on trade, and with connectivities like cross-border transmission lines and other associated infrastructure, be it access road and all which are being placed. Now these projects which were in study regime are now venturing towards construction regime. But for one project to depart from a study regime to construction regime, it takes a lot of hardships, because the bankability of the project is eventually checked or done due diligence by the lenders. So IBN, the Investment Board Nepal, where I am the Chief Executive Officer and the Member Secretary to the board, is chaired by Right Honorable Prime Minister, and it's a very powerful board. It was incepted 12 years ago, and within the history of 12 years, we have been able to bring in 4,000 megawatt of hydroelectric project into result-based framework. Out of those, 900 megawatt project has achieved substantial progress, which is a project with export proposition, where the off-taker will be from the export market, the buyer, and we are also trying best to see if we can have tri-national market interconnectivity, the Indian investors coming and investing in India, in Nepal, and through back-to-back arrangement, evacuating that power to the third market, that is Bangladesh. So this is what we would be, the very case it is realized, we'd be able to showcase that project as a regional project. So this is the very contribution that in days ahead Nepal would be making in energy transition. But out of the very importance of these projects is that the timelines which are very important, and it is very, we have realized that for us it is very important to render effective and efficient hand-holding services to our valued investors who have invested. And we do have Korean investors who have invested in 216 megawatt project, where 9 reputed lenders are involved, and that project is for domestic consumption. And also Chinese investors are also in pipeline, and with whom we are proceeding into negotiations very soon. What we have realized is the bankable project development agreements are very important. The negotiations are very important. And in days ahead, when we have a credible bankable project pipelines, it is important for us to see how best we can structure those projects and run through the solicitation and make the best deal out of those projects. But beside hydropower, for us to realize non-energy project, be it clean transport, or mass transport solutions or industrial infrastructure, I think we have a huge knowledge gap. So that is where we are trying best to see our legislative regimes are also improved. So the policy, PPP policy 2015, we are trying to now review in 2023. So most likely it's going to take a reasonable timeline of 6 to 7 months. So we would want to see, if we can really craft a bankable and a pragmatic policy, and which will give a very good indication and roadmap, a clarity for us to chart out and do needful improvement in legal, regulatory and procedural regime. So this is the mandate IBN has. IBN basically looks into large infrastructure projects. When it comes to hydropower and energy, it is 200 megawatt and above proposals we look into. And for non-energy projects, any propositions with the capital outlay of 50 million is what comes under our mandate. On mines and minerals, we have done good. Nepal has become self-reliant. We have already brought 9,000 tons per day capacity of 2 plants into commercial operations. Few others are also in pipeline, but those are on direct investment modalities. But the challenges that we have on days ahead for us is a clarity, a uniformity of understanding on the why there's immense need of PPP to realize our infrastructure development target achievement. In the very context of fiscal tightness, and where the government is overburdened with um, you know other recurrent expense, meeting recurrent expenses, I think it is high time for us to really ideate, design, develop, and create a repository of bankable projects. And I recall the very good 3 days session WAP conducted in Nepal was so fruitful for us. We hesitate to um, plan for event. We say we got to have a real doable projects, doable projects with sustainable implementation roadmap is what is must. And a good start is halfway done, but a long sort of bottlenecks do come. Foreseen problems can be nullified, minified, um, minimized to the extent possible. Unforeseen situation can be handled then and there. But these foreseen problems and the lesson learned from our past failures of PPP on non-energy projects like fast track road is what have made us responsible and over concerned that fundamentals of project marketing also says that we have to be ready in all dimensions. So PPP being a multidisciplinary knowledge based matter, I think we are working more on, as you have rightly said, on preparing means and tools, and also required legislative regimes for entertaining projects on modalities other than boot. Boot is what we've been exercising, and some seasoned, polished experts came and told me this is traditional and conventional PPP. When will you be ready, or when will IBN be ready to venture into real PPP? Forget about next generation PPP. The real PPP will happen the very point of time, because we got to look into our national accounts also to the extent we can take fiscal commitment. So the bankable PDAs, the 3 PDA project development agreement that we have signed for around 1600 megawatt project itself is carrying certain degree of contingent liability. But these obligations, that minimal obligations that the government is carrying, I mean IBN on behalf of government is carrying, if we are not able to fulfill, will take to the situation where we'll have to bear immense fiscal implications. So we are very concerned with the complexities of not doing things that you're supposed to do in a timely manner is what has always sensitized us, and guided by that principle and fundamental we are working. I think I'll stop now.
Yeah.
Naresh.
Thank you very much for giving such a candid insight into the project pipeline and the projects, the way you are developing. Now, may I now request Mr. Amin to give us insight into the Bangladesh PPP paradigm.
Thank you, Mr. Naresh. Just before I start into the project pipeline of Bangladesh, I just want to highlight the history of Bangladesh PPP market. Similar to my fellow panelists from Nepal, they have mentioned that the PPP regime has started during the 90s of earlier century. So Bangladesh has also started its journey to implement infrastructure projects through private sector participation, like in the same way. So in the 90s, we have started our journey similar to Nepal with the energy projects like power plants and gas-based power plants. These are like we have started our initial sector with power plants, and then there were no regulations. So the government has enacted the private sector power generation policy in 1996. With that, the initial project was come into operation. You see, this is a power plant of like 450 megawatt. This has been in operation since 2001, and it has been an ADB study showed that this was the lowest tariff power plant at that time in the whole world. It was the lowest tariff power plant. So this is how we started our journey in the PPP market. But as there was no regulation for the other sectors, in 2004, the Bangladesh government has enacted private sector infrastructure guidelines. So it includes like that not only for power sector, we will also implement transport, water, or whatever sectors we want to implement that can be done through PPP model. But still the confidence from the international investors were not that much. So government thought that okay, we have to do something to bring in confidence by the international investors. So in 2010, the government enacted private sector infrastructure policy, not the guideline. Then the guideline becomes the policy. So even then, there was no institutions to implement the PPP projects. So government instituted an organization named PPP Office. So then ADB, Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, they have supported the Bangladesh government to formulate the standard procedures, guidelines, procurement guidelines, and the acts and other things. So this PPP office became PPP authority in 2015, and that PPP policy got enacted as PPP Act in 2015. So then, since then, we are developing all the PPP projects under the PPP Act 2015, and at the and this PPP authority is working under the Prime Minister's office, so that the international investors get more confidence that the office is running under the Prime Minister's office. So it must be some credible organization, and since then, the PPP authority has been engaged in developing a pipeline of mega infrastructure projects in the infrastructure and social sectors. Currently, we have a pipeline of like more than 80 projects in different sectors. So this is a water sector project, and it has been in operation since last year. This is our terminal project that is going to be operational this year. And this is the most busiest international airport in our country. This is under construction, and this will be also operational next year. We have IT parks in PPP under construction. Then we have economic zone under PPP model. So these are the some successful projects I have shown, and we can say that Bangladesh is doing very good. The robust framework is also supporting its implementation path. we have projects like in the road sector, in the bridges, in the energy, in the power, then LNG terminals, IT sectors. But these are like project-based approach. So nowadays, government is thinking that okay, no, we have to go for sectoral approach. So now government has decided to conduct a pipeline study for individual sectors like a study has been already conducted in the road sector. So there has been like more than 15 projects that could be potentially implemented under PPP, and they have formulated a timeline when the projects should be in construction and operation so that the government, the PPP authority can plan accordingly. Similarly, government has already in discussion with different MDBs to conduct sectoral study in the housing sectors, in the water sectors, wastewater management sector, and as well as also bridges sector. The port sector master plan has also committed that the upcoming projects should be under PPP. Otherwise, the operations and the efficiency will not be up to the mark. That's why the upcoming ports will also be under PPP model. Then the airport, if this airport shows some success in the increase of the efficiency, another international airport in the busiest tourism region in the southern part of the Bangladesh, government is also thinking to implement that project also under PPP. So this is how we are learning and we are growing in the PPP market. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Amin, for giving a wonderful insight. In fact, uh, I must mention that in the recent past, that is in 1920, Bangladesh was the largest receiver of FDI in the infrastructure development from various MDBs. And coming to specifics, may I ask Mr. Sushil to throw light on the regulatory and project insurance paradigm which you have in PPP concerning PPPs in Nepal, the regulatory and insurance paradigm. How do
Yeah.
you look at it?
Thank you, Banaji. Getting to the first question also, on pipeline, I forgot to mention we have 42 projects, out of which around 26 projects are hydropower, but we do have also uh, awarded study rights through unsolicited gate for solar backed up by battery plants of indicative capacity 250 megawatt. So they are almost done with their technical studies, so evaluations are going on. At the same time, some industrial infrastructure also, but we are trying best to see if one of the proposed aerodrome, or let's say we try to integrate an aerocity with an aerodrome, then what would be the appropriate, development and investment modality is where a high level committee has been formed, so it will be giving a clear roadmap and suggestion to the board. So we will decide very soon on those aspects. Also, we're trying to venture into other thing also. In terms of regulatory, what I was trying to say is sector specific clarity, the clarity in policy to practice should prevail within those respective sectors also. For realizing, I might have spoken a lot that we are trying best and doing best in energy sector, but wherein another sector we are trying to sensitize and build an awareness within the those respective sectors, that it is important those projects through value for money analysis.
What is the regulatory framework to be specific?
No, to be specific, the regulatory framework that we have is the Public Private Partnership and Investment Act and the Public Private Partnership Investment Rules. And then there are procedures and directives also, which in overall the legislative regime that we have is helping us to build in the bankable PDAs. So the project development agreement itself is giving best of assurance to investors, including lenders, on investing on those projects, be it clauses of securitization or the covenants like on insurance, be it on transport price and all that, the bankable agreements have given the best of assurance is what has actually helped investor make investment decisions, and which has eventually helped financial closure and financial close also for few of the projects which we already have been successfully been able to take into construction regime. So on regulatory domain, there is lot to be done in retrospect to realizing non-energy projects. So on which we are now in phase of making needful reform, and also create regulatory framework for other modalities than boot. Like we are exploring if DBFOM and others would be.
Basically, you wish to say that there is no specific regulatory authority or regime, but the PDA itself functions as a regulatory document.
No,
Is that
basically, IBN is a high-powered agency
okay?
guided by PPPIA Act and rules. And besides, there are electricity regulatory commissions, which helps on pricing and wheeling arrangements basis they are working. But overall, we are guided by the Act. And but there are electricity development act and electricity development policies, and a lot of other prevailing act and rules gives us the ground to build PDA, formulate PDA templates and term sheets.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me now move on to Mr. Amin and ask you that Bangladesh is doing something really good as far as PPPs are concerned, and the entire world knows about it. So, what are the technological innovative practices which you possibly may have developed for financing or construction and operations of PV projects in Bangladesh?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing in the question. Actually, we have a long list of pipeline and also we are doing good, but we are learning from our mistakes. So before going to the point you have mentioned, I want to say on some challenges in we are facing. Like Bangladesh is a small country with huge number of population. So for each of the projects faces like the land acquisition is a major challenge. So Bangladesh, most of the land is agricultural land. There is densely population everywhere. So earlier government just after bidding procedure completion signed the contract. So during the implementation, we have seen that due to the timely land acquisition process, we faced delays in the construction and the whole implementation process. So for that reason, government has recently decided that before acquisition of 60 to 70% of land, we will not go for tendering because the project is signed with the private investors. They are on board and everybody is ready to start the construction, but the land acquisition is making the process delayed. So that's why this is the challenge we are trying to overcome. So on the other hand, for the financing, you know, Bangladesh is not that much matured market in terms of long-term financing. There are also regulatory barriers, like one bank cannot provide lending more than 35% of the total project cost. It's the barrier. And also the local banks cannot give lending support to a project for more than 7 years. So this is like mismatching between the project tenure and the local capacity. That's why local banks are also not that much interested to go for financing in the PPP projects. So these are the challenges. To overcome these challenges, the Bangladesh government has institutionalized two different banks like Infrastructure Development Company of Bangladesh and also Bangladesh Infrastructure Finance Fund Limited. These are owned by Ministry of Finance, and their main role is to support the PPP project implementation from the perspective of financing. Bangladesh is also the one of the vulnerable climate impact countries. It's like we are the seventh most vulnerable countries due to the climate change. So we are also taking some climate finance facilities from the different organizations that they are providing. So I think this kind of mechanisms will help us in securing long-term financing for our PPP projects. And regarding the construction and operation, so like Bangladesh is thinking of like most of the construction is like automation process should be there for the traffic collection. The intelligent traffic system shall be in place. Otherwise, we cannot integrate the traffic whole traffic system into one umbrella. Then IoT. We are also thinking IoT, Internet of Things. Then digitization of the systems, and also sometimes we are discussing about 4IR, but it is still under discussion. Nothing has been progressed so far. So this is all we are thinking, and to improve our PPP implementation modality in our country.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. And we are running short of time. So we would do away with the questions and we would move on to wrap up the session. And once again, I thank you both for giving insight and also handling the questions. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the audience